I've told you all this story before, but since nobody remembers anything I told you yesterday, I'll tell it again. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me can you hear me now in case I get antsy and move out of sometimes I roam around, When I started preaching when I was 18 years old, a little over 10 years ago, now that I think about it. And I got invited to speak at used to be a Presbyterian church, and then even then, this was about 1975, I guess. It was just a community place, community church, and I was invited to speak there as an 18-year-old whippersnapper who was going to be a minister. And so it's at Miller Grove. Now, a lot of people know where that is because there's a catfish place out there. So some of you have eaten out there. So I get in the pulpit, and they have a note that's taped to the pulpit that says, "Be sure that the microphone is on." And they also had the Lord's Prayer printed out in big letters. So I don't know if the people that had been preaching there didn't know it, couldn't remember it, but they said, "Be sure the microphone's on." And then underneath that it said, "Because the agnostics in this room are terrible." Now, I don't know if they didn't know how to spell acoustics or if the agnostics in the room were terrible. Now, I don't know how the agnostics are here today. Well, I guess we'll find out. I don't know if y'all noticed this or not, but last week was Easter. Did y'all know about that? And I was told that there were more people here then than there are now, which is just shocking to me. Easter is a terrible thing to waste. Would you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. What would you say is the most visible, enduring symbol of Easter Sunday? If you Google it, don't do that now, but if you Google this, you will get an Easter bunny and Easter eggs. We went to a lot of trouble to make these things work for you people. You see that? But when Christians are polled by George Gallup or the Pew Research Center, and they're asked the question, what is the most enduring symbol of Easter? The overwhelming choice is an empty tomb. And that there can be no doubt that the tomb being void of the body of Jesus is why we've come here today. But I say this every year, and I'll say it again, and I want you to listen to me very carefully because I hate it when I'm misquoted in the Tyler paper. I just hate that. So listen very carefully to this. The tomb was not empty. You people listening to me? The tomb was not. Now watch this. It was void of the body of Jesus. But when the women got there, I had Luke read, Nancy Grant read the account out of Luke 24 chapter verses 1 through 12. When they got to the tomb, when the women arrived there, in the Gospel of Mark, there was one young man dressed in white in the tomb, and the body was gone. In Luke and in Matthew, there are either angels or men. It's unclear when we read this in Scripture, but they were there proclaiming that Christ was gone, and so the tomb was filled with good news. God, watch this now. God does not operate on empty. God doesn't know empty. God only operates on full. And so the tomb was not empty. It was full of good news of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. CNN reports that 77% of Americans identify themselves as Christians, and 58% of those 77% said that they were going to attend church last week. 88% of American parents make Easter baskets for their children, and between 30 and 40,000 kids show up at the White House for the Easter egg roll scheduled the day after Easter each year. And last but not least, my favorite, 76%. You see that? 76% of chocolate bunny eaters go for the bunny ears first. Do y'all do that? You think I'm making this up? That's according to a survey by the National Confectionery Association of America. There can be no doubt that there are many symbols and activities associated with Easter Sunday and with Easter generally. But for those of us who believe in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, and we believe that that is the reason for the season, this morning I want us for just a few minutes to think about a couple of other enduring symbols. One of them very familiar to us, another one not so much. I want to start with this one. This is one of my favorite enduring symbols of Easter. A foot race. A foot race. If you think I'm making this up, you can look in Matthew 28:8, Mark 16:8, Luke 24:12, John 20 verse 2, and John 4:28. And in every one of these cases, you will find people running. Now, I used to love to run. I used to run all over the place. I ran in all kinds of events, like 5K races and all that. So I love to run. And now I can't run because the entire right side of my body needs to be replaced. It's just pitiful. I'm in bad shape. And one of the reasons I'm in bad shape is because of this gentleman here. Because I played basketball with him for so many years, and I played on every kind of court imaginable, and my knees are bone on bone. I get up in the morning and stagger around. It's just unbelievable. And so I need surgery on my knees, and I'm going to have them replaced. I can't run anymore. So I have an electric bicycle. And they work, and you pedal, so I'm not a sissy. I pedal everywhere I go. But running was important that first Easter, Matthew 28:8. So the women hurried away from the tomb, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Mark 16:8. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Fled means run. Luke 20, this is my favorite, Luke 24:12. Peter, when the women went and told him what had happened, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves and went away wondering to himself what had just happened. In John 22, in the King James, speaking of Mary Magdalene, it says, she runneth therefore. More modern translations say, Mary Magdalene running to Simon Peter and the disciples said, they've taken the Lord and I don't know where they put him. I don't know where he is. And in John 4:28, a passage that is not connected to the resurrection, it's during Jesus' ministry, it's the woman at the well. It says, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to town and said to the people, come and see the man who knows everything about me. In the presence of Christ, in the knowledge of the good news that he is who he said he was, people cannot stand still. They must move. It is no accident or mere coincidence that in every one of the four Gospels, the story of the resurrection is a foot race. When we bring all the gospel accounts together, there is a swift succession of foot races. The thrill of the glad news, even before the heart was sure that it was true, was so overwhelming that it started everybody who heard it running. I wished I could run. The finest picture of the first Easter which the imagination has ever conceived is not just a picture of an empty tomb or even the risen Christ, but the picture of Peter and John as they raced to the tomb. Their strained eyes filled with wonder, their seams compressed the trembling hope of the whole world that maybe it's true. Maybe Jesus is alive. The modern marathon race originated in the first Olympic Games in Athens in 1896, but it was actually inspired by the legendary run Epaphroditus. That's the way you pronounce this guy's name in Greek. It's unbelievable. I had to Google it. It's P-H-E-I-D-I-P-P-I-D-E-S. Try to pronounce that. You can't do it unless you listen to somebody say Epaphroditus. He ran with the good news in Athens in 490 BC with the Athenian victory over the Persians, and when he gave the news, he collapsed and died. You remember that? That's where the marathon race came from. How many people in here saw the movie Forrest Gump? If you have not seen Forrest Gump, you must be living in another world. Everybody's seen that movie. I don't know if you recognize this, but Forrest running is a central theme in the movie. He initially begins running after Jenny left him. He ran across Alabama, then to the ocean, and continued running across the country. He explains that he kept on going, eventually running for 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. He said after that, I think I'll go home now. What's the significance of Forrest Gump's running in that movie? He tells us, and I quote, "My mama always said you got to put the past behind you before you can move on. That's what my running was all about. You've got to put your past behind you. That's what my running was all about." For Forrest Gump, running was a way to put his past behind him. It was a way of easing the pain of losing his love, Jenny. It was a way to run from his past life and run to a potential new life, something new that was in store for him, possibly. I don't know if you ever read about this or saw it on the news, but in 2002, Rob Pope, Mama, Kathy, was dying. And she called him to her bedside and she said, I want you to do, when I die, I want you to do something that will make a difference in the lives of other people. So for him, that meant he needed to do something that no one had ever done before. There were only a few hundred people that had run across America, but nobody, as he thought about it, had ever done what Forrest Gump did. So he decided that he would do it. In late 2016, the 44-year-old from Liverpool, England, began his quest to run the famous route taken by the lead character in Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks, in 1994. And he did. The journey took Pope through 43 states over 422 days as he crisscrossed the country 4 times. He covered a total, this is just staggering to me, this is how much this guy ran, 15,621 miles, or 4 times the length of the Amazon River. He wore out 33 pairs of Nikes. A veterinarian by trade and an experienced marathon runner, Pope began the first leg of his journey in Mobile, Alabama in September of 2016 in a bid to raise money for the Worldwide for Nature and Peace Direct. That was his motivation. He did something on the help of his mother's request to make a difference in the world. Now think about this. I want you to think about this. What if you decided today that you were going to do something that would make a difference in the lives of other people because of the sake of the resurrection of Jesus Christ? And you say, well, you don't understand. I'm too old. Yeah, I know we're too old to run like that. Some people say, I'm too young. I don't have enough experience. Nobody will hire me. And some people say, I'm in middle age. I'm married. I got a family. I got bills to pay. I'm just barely able to survive. What does it take to make a difference in the lives of people? What do you have to do? Think about that. I'm going to give you an example in just a few minutes when we close. There's a famous, a very famous poetic drama called The Trial of Jesus. It's by a guy that I really like as an author, been dead a long time, John Masefield. He portrays the trial of Jesus. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but it's going to be on the test, so listen very carefully. History teaches us that Pontius Pilate had a wife whose name was Procula, spelled Procula. This is according to Jewish historians like Josephus and other historians. Procula, the wife of Pilate, according to Macefield, is deeply concerned over the crucifixion of Jesus. And so she asked a Roman soldier who was guarding the tomb by the name of Longinus to report on what he had found. Was the tomb really empty? Pilate's wife asked in great excitement, "Do you believe his claim? Do you think it's possible?" Longinus, the Roman guard, says, "Ma'am, if a man believes anything up to the point of dying on a cross for it, he will find others to believe it." Procula looks at him in the eye and says, "But do you believe it?" And he says, and I quote, "He was a young fellow, my lady, not past middle age, and he was alone and defiled by all the Jews and the Romans. And when they were done with him, he was a broken down thing, and he was dead on the cross." "Do you believe he's dead?" Procula says. Longinus, "No, lady, I don't." She takes him by the hand and says, "Then where do you think he is?" I love this line right here. Now watch this. "Loose in the world, lady, where neither Jew nor Roman can stop his truth." The power of the resurrection is loose in the world. And it's loose in the world through people like you and I who believe it. And it's only through people like you and I who believe it who can continue to proclaim it. And we need to proclaim it running. If not physically running, at least running with the enthusiasm of our heart. Now, I know we all have things that happen to us that are devastating, bad things that happen to us. I got a list a mile long. I was a baby. I was born last. My oldest brother was 11 years older than me. Graduated from Sulphur Springs High School with Larry Gillum in 1962. It's unbelievable, isn't it? My middle brother was 8 years older than me. And then I was born in 1954. My mother had a nervous breakdown. She did. She went to a doctor in Sulphur Springs, Dr. W. Ray Hanna. She was 32 years old. In 1953, her mother had burned to death in a fire. You'd never get this from a doctor today, I don't think. He examined her, says, "Miss Byrd, you're in perfect health. You're a beautiful woman." My mother was beautiful. I used to be good looking. I got over it. He said, "What you need to do is go home and have a baby." Can you believe a doctor would tell a woman that? She says to him, "You are a quack." And she went home, and I was born. So that means that I'm the result of a nervous condition. Literally, that's what happened. So my daddy died in front of me in 1973. My mother died at 91 of Alzheimer's. She was living with Tanny and I. Both of my brothers had died. And my wife of 40 years died of multiple sclerosis at the age of 62, at home with me taking care of her. So I know that life can get out of our hands. But John Masefield has another poem. And it's called "Widow in the By Street." And in this poem of "Widow in the By Street," it's a beautiful poem. Masefield says that the young woman went to see her son executed for a crime he had committed. And she makes this statement. She's moved to pray for her son. And in her prayer, she says, and refers to the hope of eternal life, the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Listen to this. "As a rest for broken things to mend." I'm going to say that again. A rest for broken things to mend. Now watch this. There are some things that happen to you and that happen to me, that happen to all of us in our lives, that we cannot fix here on earth. They're too broke to fix. We can't fix it. Only eternity can fix it. Only the eternal God can deal with things too broke to mend. Only the resurrection. Bishop Kenneth Kirk of Oxford once said that every time of upheaval, people have asked the same question, and we hear it all the time. What is this world coming to? They were asking it in the 1st century AD, but Kirk says they were asking the wrong question. The question is not, what is this world coming to? But if you're a Christian who believes in the resurrection, it's, look what has come into this world. The Christians were convinced that they had the answer to that query, that God had come into the world in Christ, and that the things which Jesus Christ taught and for which he lived and died were the center of the universe. Good news cannot walk, it must run, and not with your legs, and with your heart. So you say, well, okay, but I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. Listen very carefully to this story. It's called The Mailman. It's a Tony Campolo story. Tony Campolo was a professor of sociology at Eastern Pennsylvania College. One Friday, a young professor of English literature at a state university walked into the academic dean's office and announced that he would not be back on Monday to teach. He was quitting. The dean explained that there was no way he could just walk out on his contract. He said, if you quit, you'll have no future in teaching. You'll be blackballed from any job for which you apply at other schools. To all of this, the young professor simply shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't care. I can't do this anymore. I quit. Campolo said his mother called me and told me what he had done. She asked me to go talk to him. After all, if he did not teach, what else could he do with a PhD in English literature? He had a PhD in English literature and he quit. Where's he going to get a job? Walmart, Lowe's, where? Conceding to the plea of his mother, I went to see him. He was living in an apartment, an attic apartment in Trenton, New Jersey, one of those with its lofts decorated with interesting posters and bookcases full of avant-grade books. We don't have those anymore, do everything on computer. He told me to sit down. All that there was to sit in was a beanbag chair. Y'all remember those? He said it was like a giant amoeba. I felt almost devoured by it when I tried to sit in it. He looked at me and said, I quit. That's all there is to it. I couldn't stand it anymore. Every time I walked into that classroom, I died a little bit. Campolo said, I understood what he was talking about because I myself, a college teacher at the time, knew what it's like to walk into a classroom and pour your heart out for truth, truth rich from suffering and pain, gleaned from the sorrow of human existence, and cry and bleed for truth. And some student in the last row raises his hand and says, do we have to know this for the final? Every time it happens, a college professor dies just a little bit. After a while, I was aware that there was no way to dissuade him from his decision. I said, what are you going to do? You got a PhD in English literature. What are you going to do for a living? I asked. He said to me, I'm a mailman. I responded, a PhD mailman. Now that's something. He laughed and said, you know, there ain't too many of us out there. Being raised on the Protestant ethic, I said to him what you would expect me to say. I bet you're going to be a wonderful mailman. I bet you're the best mailman that there'll ever be. He said, no, you know, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm a lousy mailman. Really? Lousy, aren't you? He laughed. Everybody else in the post office gets their mail delivered by 2:30 in the afternoon or 3 at the latest. I never get mine delivered till 5. I looked at him and I said, what takes you so long? Why are you 3 hours later than anybody else? Watch this now. Wake up. We're getting to the grand finale. I visit, he said. You can't imagine how many people on my route never get visited until I became the mailman. There are interesting people on my route, people who are interested in literature. There are hurting people who need the comfort that comes from great poets. There are people who read and want to share what they've learned. And when I go home, I can't sleep at night. I said, why? He said, you know how hard it is to sleep after you've drank 20 cups of coffee? Campolo said, I wasn't surprised when I found out the following year that the people of his mail route had gotten together and thrown a surprise birthday party for him at the local American Legion Hall. He was special to them, and they were special to him. And watch this. His mail route had become his mission field. His mail route had become his mission field. Work should be a way of living out our commitments and our love for people. So as far as it is possible, we should never settle for anything less. Work should be a means for spiritual fulfillment. And the resurrection of Jesus Christ calls us to find something to do that makes a difference in the lives of other people. That doesn't seem like much, to just visit people. But God, if you're still breathing, has a plan for you, and he wants you to do something for the sake of Christ, for the glory of the resurrection. Easter is a terrible thing to waste, and it's wasted if it doesn't turn us into people who make a difference in the lives of others. Parade magazine hosted an interesting photo contest one time that was restricted to pictures of actual road signs in America. I've been through the Mojave Desert. Y'all probably have too. There is a sign out there that reads, "Absolutely nothing for 22 miles." Near Tallahassee, Florida, there's a sign that states, "Water on road when raining." Imagine that. You may have seen this one. You can see it. It's not far from here. In Shreveport, Louisiana, there is really a stop sign with an official subtitle, "Stop and Smell the Roses." In Central Oregon, one of my favorites, there boasts a sign that says, "Soft shoulder, blind curve, steep grade, big trucks, good luck." But my personal favorite can be found hanging next to a traffic light in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. The sign declares, "This light never turns green." Along the road of life, we encounter a variety of messages and experiences. But wherever we go and whatever we encounter, we can journey with confidence that Jesus Christ not only goes before us, he goes with us. And the power of the good news of the resurrection is he has called you to make a difference in the lives of others. Pray to God that he will show you what he wants you to do so that you might be able to make that happen. It is the Sunday after Easter, the good news of the gospel, the word of the Lord.